Hello and welcome to Retro Reviews, my channel where I review my favorite retro video games of all time, as well as some modern releases I have recently finished. And today I want to talk about a game that was absolutely one of my very favorites back on the Nintendo GameCube, and still remains one of my favorites to this day. Now, I was introduced to the horror genre of games, the action horror genre, when I was kind of little. My brother got a Dreamcast, and he played Resident Evil Code Veronica on that, and I got to watch that entire playthrough with him. And replaying it today, it's not nearly as scary as it was back then, but man, was it terrifying when I first saw it. I remember so much about that game. And so we were fans of the Resident Evil series. We went through the Resident Evil 1 and 0 on the Nintendo GameCube as well. We were well versed in the series up to this point. And when they announced that Resident Evil 4 was going to be coming out for the GameCube, there was so much excitement from both of us. We saw the trailers, we ate up every little bit of information that we could. We were so excited about it. And there was a lot of controversy with Resident Evil 4, but prior to its release, there was some discussion about getting rid of the tank controls and the fixed camera angles for an over-the-shoulder view and a more action-focused type of game. People were worried that it wasn't going to be nearly as scary as the likes of Resident Evil Remake. And those issues were warranted for sure. People were nervous about that for good reason. They were worried that the horror would lose all focus. Resident Evil 3 had kind of pivoted that direction already. It was a little more action-packed, but it still had those fixed camera angles. It was still really scary. Nemesis was a really scary enemy, so they were worried that they wouldn't be able to implement the same amount of horror. But fortunately, when the game finally debuted, all fears were put to rest. This game was not only fantastic for its genre, it wasn't just probably the best Resident Evil game up to that point when people started playing it, it was also incredibly scary. Now, I love Resident Evil 4 for a variety of reasons. First and foremost, I really love the implementation of the over-the-shoulder camera. They did an excellent job putting this in the franchise. Up to this point, they hadn't used anything like that. A free camera or a semi-free camera was not something that was experimented with at all. In fact, the early demos that they showed of Resident Evil 4 were actually more like the originals, like Resident Evil 2 and 3. They had the fixed camera angles. It was a little more free moving, but that was scrapped for something more action focused. And the different demo they used actually went on to become Devil May Cry. The fact that it was too action focused made them think this isn't Resident Evil, let's scrap it. But instead of scrapping it, they turned it into an entire new franchise. So they had two of these templates they wanted to go with, and neither of them really worked out for them. But going for something that was a little bit in between was exactly right. I think Resident Evil 4 really hits the spot between action and horror. It really, really works. Even to this day, I've played Resident Evil 4 on a bunch of different consoles. I played it originally on the Nintendo GameCube. I played the PS2 version for a little bit at my friend's house. I played through the Wii version. I have played through the PS4 HD version. I remember pre-ordering that. It was like $17 brand new when it first launched. I'm like, yeah, absolutely, I'm going to play through this game again. And I recently finished it again on the Nintendo Switch prior to Resident Evil 4 Remake coming out. I realized, hey, the remake's coming out soon. I better play through the original one more time just so I can have a fair comparison. And I will be doing a Resident Evil 4 Remake review next week, and then I will likely do a comparison video after that. I want to stray away from comparisons as much as possible at this point and just talk about the original Resident Evil 4. So first and foremost, this takes place in a new environment. This is somewhere in Spain. Leon Kennedy from Resident Evil 2 is back as the best protagonist in the game. I think at this point we can all agree that Leon Kennedy is the best protagonist in all Resident Evil. Most people's favorite games are Resident Evil 2 Remake and Resident Evil 4. Both have Leon at the helm. He's just phenomenal. And in this game, he comes from coming from the new cop, the rookie cop in Resident Evil 2, to a hardened veteran at this point. You can tell right from the opening scene that Leon has seen some stuff and he's prepared for pretty much anything. He has a fairly cocky attitude. He has lots of quips that he has with the local law enforcement that he's with. You can tell that he's done this once or twice, but he's on a mission to save the president's daughter who's been abducted by a terrorist group known as the Los Illuminados. He hasn't heard much about it, he just knows that's what he's going to do. This game is also really unique because it's the first one to ditch zombies entirely. You don't have any undead in this game. That was probably another cause for concern for a lot of people. Instead, you have villagers that have been infected by the Las Plagas. So a virus that overtakes their body and they can be controlled. They have more almost superhuman kind of strength and endurance. It takes a lot to knock them down. Later on in the game, if you pop off their head, sometimes the virus inside appears as different variants that'll attack you in different ways. It's quite scary. They're a formidable force. And that can be really exemplified in the very first sequence. Now, I think Resident Evil 4 actually has the best tutorial sequence in all of video gaming, even to this day. You come up to this area you're exploring. The two law enforcement guys you're with, one of them tries to bail, another one gets captured. So one of them dies, one of them gets captured and hung on like a stake in the middle of the town. They light them on fire. That's your introduction to these villagers here. You see it through some binoculars that Leon uses. And I'm sure he's like, what the heck is going on? So you investigate the village, and the second you aggro any of the villagers, you have an intense battle sequence. Now, this game really does horror really well because it really relies on inventory management. The previous games, you had very limited inventory spots. This one, you have a lot more to work with, but that's because you have more enemies to deal with as well and more situations that require more weaponry. Now, at the very beginning, you don't have a whole lot. You've got a pistol with some ammo. You've got a knife. That's fairly effective at keeping things back in little spurts. You can use your knife effectively if you can really utilize that knife and save your ammo as much as you can get really far without having to utilize your weapons much at all. But in this sequence, you have 10, 15, 20 enemies start to mob you. You have a big open environment to run around in. You have lots of buildings to hide in, ladders to climb. You can jump through windows. You can knock down ladders to try and keep them at bay. But you have to survive this sequence. And this is a great tutorial sequence because it tells you everything you need to know about this game. You go into one of the houses and you trigger a cutscene where he moves like a bookshelf in front of the door. That's something you can actually do. And then you can see in the same room, you have a window that you can block with another piece of furniture. You can go up the stairs to run out. You can jump through the window. There's a prompt to jump through it. People will push ladders onto the windows, breaking them to try and climb in. You can knock those ladders down. At the top of the staircase of that same building, you'll find a shotgun behind a case of glass. And that's showing you that you need to break things sometimes to get items. You can see them glinting behind glass. You have to break that first. The game is just fantastic at giving you exactly what you need without telling you how to do it. I love tutorials that let you experiment, giving the player enough respect that they can figure things out on their own. That gives you some context clues for sure. It will tell you what you need to know if you get close enough to it, but you have to be the one to go out and actually do it. And I love that. I love tutorials that do not hold your hand, that really just let you jump into it and give you just enough to get going so that you can do it all yourself. So this opening sequence ends after a while, but not before getting introduced to one of the scariest enemies in the entire game, which is the Chainsaw Ganado. Now, the Chainsaw Ganado is absolutely terrifying. You hear the chainsaw rev up, you get a little mini cutscene where you see him, the guy with the bag over his head, he rips the chainsaw, it starts running, and this guy is a tank. You will have to use lots of shotgun ammo. You have to use a grenade if you can find one. You have to utilize your pistol ammo as much as you can because he will not stop without enough hit stun before actually going down. And if he goes down once, you'll probably have to knock him down about 6 or 7 times before he's actually dead. This guy is absolutely terrifying, and he comes back perpetually. There's more and more chainsaw enemies as the game progresses. This is your introduction in the very first fight sequence, which is really brilliant. It really ramps up the horror in a major way. You're already getting overwhelmed by Ganados. You are running for your life, essentially. You're trying to find ammo as much as you can, healing herbs, anything you can to figure out how to finish the sequence. And then you get a chainsaw guy running after you. Once you finally have survived long enough, a bell will ring out in the distance, and a cutscene will trigger. And the Ganados stop what they're doing. They look toward the bell and they start walking toward it, mumbling Lord Sadler. And that's your first introduction to the main villain of the game. You hear his name for the first time. And what really caps this opening sequence off is a perfect response from Leon. He sees them all walking away from him, and he goes, "Where's everybody going? Bingo?" It's absolutely hilarious. The Resident Evil games are known for their horror sequences and their schlocky B horror movie lines and dialogue. It's always been really corny and bad. But in Resident Evil 4, they strike the perfect balance of corny and funny at the same time. It's brings a lot of levity to these situations in the best way possible. It's not just a goofy line like the Jill sandwich line in Resident Evil 1. It's actually funny and just light enough to lighten the mood and end off these chapters, cap off these sections perfectly. I actually love the dialogue in this game. I think they did an excellent job, and I'll attribute a lot of that to the voice actors as well. I don't think there's a single bad voice acting performance in this game. With the amount of cheesy dialogue the Resident Evil games are known for, you would expect at least a few of these to become really meme-worthy, and they do to some degree, but not because they're stupid, because they're just genuinely funny and delivered to perfection. I will point out especially Leon Kennedy's voice actor. I think he's phenomenal. Ada's voice actor is really fantastic. Jack Krauser, one of the main villains. Ramon Salazar, Osmond Sadler. Just great performances overall. My least favorite is probably Ashley's voice acting performance. Not so much because of the performance itself. She's just annoying and pervasive throughout the game. Her lines are a little annoying. I think that was more the writing's fault. I think the voice actress did a really great job with that. It's just a little too grating for me at times. We'll get into that a little bit later. So as the game progresses, you will unlock more and more items, more and more weapons to find. You'll find things like the shotgun in the initial area. You'll find grenade launchers. You'll find all sorts of things to trick out Leon's kit to make him a more formidable force. And you will need it because the enemies and the areas get more intense and more difficult to navigate. And one person that will help you with that is probably the best NPC in all of gaming, the Merchant. He's a mysterious figure that shows up with these blue lit torches that you can find throughout the world in various areas after completing certain sections. You'll first encounter him, and he'll tell you to come over to his little area, and you have him open up his jacket, and he shows you all his wares. He has all sorts of stuff for you. He can upgrade your case, which is your storage unit for all your guns and your ammunition, your healing supplies. You can upgrade your weaponry, which is a really cool feature. I think that's actually fantastic. You can upgrade your weaponry from the very beginning. It will make your gun more valuable to sell back later if you want to upgrade to a different type of pistol or a different type of shotgun. You'll have different variants of shotguns. You'll have one, the pump action initially, but you'll get like a striker, which is a semi-automatic shotgun, one that you can pull really quickly. You'll get you get different variants of each weapon that will give you different bonuses. What's really cool is if you stick with the original weapons and you upgrade them to their fullest, they get a special unlock at the very end as well, an extra thing that gives them extra power. The shotgun, if you upgrade the original shotgun all the way, which is much slower than the newer shotguns he'll get in his inventory later, you'll be able to get one that shoots. It doesn't lose like any damage at long range, so you can shoot things from really far away with almost max damage from the shotgun, which is pretty broken. And I love that Resident Evil 4 really does that for you. It gives you options. If you want to stick with the original stuff, like I did this last playthrough, it's absolutely fantastic. You'll get rewarded big for sticking with the original stuff. But if you upgrade to the new weapons, you'll also get little bonuses for that as well. You'll get things like better fire rate or better damage, better initial base damage. And you can upgrade those weapons as well. I love that as you upgrade your weapons, they get more value so that you can sell them and buy new things later on. I think it's a fantastic system. To supplement that, if you don't have enough money, there's also the treasure system, which I think is done with absolute perfection in this game. I love the treasure system. You'll find things that have just base value that you can sell purely on your own, but you also find special items that'll say things like, you can see 3 distinct circular holes in this that looks like something used to be there. You have to find 3 specific treasure items that go into those holes to make it much more valuable. You can sell all of them on their own, but if you combine them, excuse me, now you can sell them on their own, or you can wait and combine them to get a much more valuable thing altogether, which is really, really cool. I think this was an ingenious system that they implemented. Some things take quite a while to find and combine together. And if you take the time and you're patient, you don't sell things off really early, you'll get rewarded in a major way. This helped me afford lots of upgrades at the same time to make my weapons really powerful early on in the game. It encourages exploration as well. This world isn't super open, but there are open sections, and the more you explore it, the more things you do. Like if you buy the treasure map from the merchant, you'll be able to find all the treasure items on the island that you're on. And that means you can make sure that you don't miss anything. Encourages a lot of exploration. Now, the world is actually pretty explorable and really fun to explore. You'll find little secrets. You'll find different enemies. You'll find like even some mini boss encounters if you explore the world a little bit extra. And I think that that having something like the treasure map really encourages that exploration. And I think that players should absolutely utilize that exploration to find new things. It also gives you more chances of survival. You'll find more ammunition, more healing items, especially when they're a little less abundant. Healing in this game is really excellent. It's just like the other games. You have the herb system. You have green, red, and yellow herbs. If you combine them together, they make more powerful herbs. A couple greens together is slightly more powerful than just eating 2 green herbs separately. If you combine a red and a green, it gives you a full restore. If you combine a yellow with a green and a red, it gives you a full restore and increases your overall health. Yellow herbs give you an extra boost to your overall health, which is really cool. They can be utilized really anytime. You combine them with just green and they'll still boost your health. But the red and green combo is the pinnacle. And if you can get yellow, green, red all together, you're going to full heal plus get a little extra. And sometimes that can be the difference in a big fight. You also have things like first aid spray that just give you a full heal straight up, but those are much less abundant. The herb system is typically what you're going to be having to use to survive in this game. And managing your healing items is really important. If you're not managing healing, you're not going to be able to survive in this game. Just like if you're not managing your weapons and your ammunition. Otherwise, you're going to be relying on the knife. Now, Leon does have a knife that is pervasive. You can pull it out at any time, use it. I like to shoot enemies, get them into a stance. Sometimes if you hit them in certain spots, like in their knees, they'll go down to their knees and you get a button prompt if you run up to them where you can do like a kick or a suplex and throw them onto the ground. And then you run up to them and you knife them over and over, and then you can kill them a lot faster, which is fantastic. It's lots of good strategy to incentivize you to save your ammunition. If you shoot Ganados in the face, if they don't have a helmet or anything protecting them, they'll go into some kind of similar animation. You can kick them or knock them down depending on if you're in front or behind them. I love these little action prompts that you get. These are actually pervasive throughout the world. If you find an area where you can jump off something, it'll give you a button prompt to do so. You can't just do it manually. You'll have to find the places, but it's really nice. This gives you a very clear indication when you can or cannot do something. Now, this game also has a really great mechanic that was both popularized and killed by this game. And that is quick time events. I've talked about button prompts just barely. Sometimes you'll have quick time events where you have to press a button in a certain sequence in order to get through it, or mash a button. If like there's a sequence where a boulder's rolling after you, to mash it as fast as you can or run away. Or another one where you have to dodge things. Sometimes in combat, not during a cutscene at all, you'll have to use button prompts to dodge things. I think it's implemented to perfection. This game implemented QTEs in such a way that it was actually really engaging and really fun. It added to the tension. Some boss fights, you'll have cutscenes where if you fail the button prompt, you get punished or even lose the battle straight up. These typically don't kill you straight up. Usually they are meant to give some tension, and they do so in a really good way. A lot of these cutscenes are really fun. They're really well choreographed, and you hitting the button prompts is a test of your reaction time and your ability to pay attention as well. Because not every time they'll give you the same button sequence. It might tell you to hit A, it might tell you to hit X, it might tell you to hit R and L at the same time. I think it's done very, very well. Now, a lot of people will criticize QuickTime events in most games, but Resident Evil 4 does them really well. And the best sequence is actually late in the game when you're fighting Jack Krauser, one of your old army pals that you used to be with. Now he's one of the antagonists of the game. The first confrontation with him is a choreographed knife fight. And you have to hit button prompts throughout the entirety of the fight in order to survive and progress the game further. It is done perfectly. There is not a better QuickTime event in all of video gaming. This section is absolutely beautiful. The way that they choreographed it is just really special. And it's hard to explain because QuickTime events do have kind of a stigma. But doing it yourself, especially for the very first time, you can understand why this system is actually really good for Resident Evil 4. So along with the combat's fantastic, you've got the QuickTime events that are actually really, really great. The treasure system is awesome. You also have great enemy variety. I talked about the viruses inside the enemies sometimes popping out of their heads. You have different variants of that. Their initial one is just gives them extra health. Sometimes they'll pull out a big spike, like almost like a knife that swings at you from long range. You have ones that will like grab you and eat you or spit acid all over you. You have ones that detach from the body entirely when you kill them. They'll run at you and do damage. The different varieties of the viruses add some spice, as well as the variety of enemy types. You'll find different enemies in different areas. You have the villagers in the very beginning section who aren't super formidable. They're not super fast. You have like military ones later on in the game that are much faster. They have armor on them. They're much scarier. You'll have different almost like semi-bosses, like the chainsaw enemy, or a machine gun guy that's pretty similar, pretty tanky, but he shoots a machine gun from long range at you and is very accurate. All these different enemy types come at different points of the game, different sections, and it kind of represents the area that you're in. It does it very well. It ramps up the difficulty the more and more you go into this game. You'll have different boss varietals that are fantastic as well. The opening boss sequence is a fight on a lake with this monster that lives there. Absolutely terrifying. The first time I saw it, it was beyond frightening for me. I was pretty little watching my brother play through this game, and it was terrifying watching him be on this boat all by himself, just like a little motorized boat. You get stuck to the monster and you have to throw little spears at it, some fishing spears, over and over until you finally kill it. If you get knocked off the boat, you have to mash a button to get back to the boat in time before you get eaten. If you get too low, you won't be able to make it back no matter how fast you mash, and you get swallowed up by this monster. Absolutely terrifying introduction. You also have a gigantic Ganado, El Gigante, that is really terrifying. He's the second major boss you fight, and you'll fight different versions of that monster later on in the game too. You'll even have a duo of them in like a lava area, which is pretty crazy. The way this game does bosses is absolutely fantastic. I won't spoil all of them for you. If you haven't played Resident Evil 4 at this point, I don't know what to tell you. You really should go out and do it. But the enemy types in this game are flawless. They are really scary. The tension ramps up with every new encounter that you face. The main boss fights like Ramon Salazar and Osmond Sadler are absolutely fantastic as well. I think Salazar is one of my favorites. Limited space, really hulking monster, terrifying, Resident Evil 4 did a fantastic job. Whoever directed this game did just the best job with implementing bosses and enemy types. It keeps the tension ramping the more and more you play. So Resident Evil 4 is one of those games that just really outdid its wildest dreams. It was originally a GameCube exclusive, but once Capcom realized how phenomenal it was, they knew they were going to have to port it to other systems after the exclusivity deal had ended. And they absolutely did. And now you can find Resident Evil 4 on any major platform pretty much. My biggest recommendation would probably be, if you can play it on the GameCube. I actually love the original GameCube version. I think it's fantastic. The graphics are actually really phenomenal, even for this day. They use motion capture technology that they kind of invested a lot into early on. It was pretty expensive, something that wasn't utilized very much. And so the character models actually look fantastic even to this day, even on the original hardware. The HD version's the same. It looks fantastic. I would recommend either going with the original GameCube or PS2 versions, or if you need to go modern, which absolutely most people are going to have to, I would say the PlayStation 4 version, Xbox One version, that's probably the best place to do it. I would not recommend the Switch version. I don't know what it is about it. You'd think emulating a PlayStation 2 era game, even with the HD version on the PlayStation 4, it should be just a slight downgrade of that. I think it looks worse than any other version somehow. It also plays a little funky. I don't know. I couldn't put my finger on what it was, but I did not like controlling Leon in the Switch version. I would recommend going back to one of the originals or play the HD versions on the PS4 or Xbox One. So if you haven't played Resident Evil 4 yet, it's absolutely phenomenal. It's one of those games that revitalized an entire series and an entire genre and influenced games for many years to come. Dead Space is a direct result of Resident Evil 4. You can see the influences immediately upon playing Dead Space. A lot of horror games really looked up to Resident Evil 4 and tried to copy its template. to kind of capture that lightning in a bottle again. There's no real excuse to not play Resident Evil 4 nowadays. It's really cheap. You can find it on most consoles. You can find it digitally for really cheap too. Debuted at $20. So it's not a big ask. So I highly recommend you go and play this game if you have not, especially with the recent remake. The recent remake getting nominated for Game of the Year at the Game Awards. It's really fantastic. It's a testament to how incredible the original truly was. So go out and play it. I give Resident Evil 4 a platinum rank, hands down. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.